Welcome. Please come and grab a seat. Fill your drinks. If you could make your way forward, we've got some reserved seating at the front. Don't be shy. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to Mannkal's 2020 Emerging Leaders. My name is Andrew Pickford. I'm the Executive Director of Mannkal Economic Education Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome students, friends and families here tonight. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to Mannkal's board and ambassadors. I see many in the audience tonight. There's still plenty of seats here if you'd like to sit. The reason we are here tonight is to celebrate our returned scholars. These are the students that have completed Mannkal's Leadership Development Program. If you see them, they have name tags. I encourage all the students, lecturers, ambassadors and interested people to talk to them about their experience after the ceremony. It's important to note that we can't run these events and our overall program without the support of our ambassadors. And in particular, I'd like to recognise Willie Packer, who continues his long-running support of Mannkal and is sponsoring the event tonight. And also, as we're meeting here at UWA, I'd like to welcome our university partners. We have, I think, representatives from the entire sector here this evening, and most students from various universities. For those who are not familiar with Mannkal, our mission is simple. We educate future free market leaders. Our flagship activity is a leadership development program. You'll meet some of our recently returned scholars here tonight. They'll be interviewed on stage shortly. We'll present each of them with a graduation certificate, and we'll also award the John Hyde Prize for the best scholar of the cohort. Tonight we'll also hear a brief keynote from Gloria Alvarez, and as per our tradition, Mr. Ron Manners will close the event with his words of wisdom. So before I go to the formal part of the program, I'd like to reflect on Mannkal, what we're doing in the future. So we deliberately called this the leadership program, and this has become quite important in the last few weeks and days. And there is no denying that the world has changed in the last few months, last fortnight, last 24 hours. And this is not just Coles running out of toilet paper. It goes a bit deeper. The coronavirus impact will start to, and is already impacting the real economy. This will manifest in the next few weeks and months, and we've got the 2020 US election cycle to further slow investment decisions. So as bad as things are, I'm reminded what my grandmother told me when there were challenges. She said, "This too shall pass." And this is the reason why we teach our scholars about resilience and adaptation. In good times, the need for these skills are not as obvious. Managers prosper and leaders quietly sit in the background. When true leaders are needed, they step up. So without the world wars, I suspect that Monash and Churchill would more likely be footnotes than key figures of the 20th century. And at the local level, we see this as well, be it a bushfire, flood or cyclone. The people that end up leading are not usually the highest elected officials. They are the natural leaders that emerge when crisis presents. So like many other organisations, and your inboxes would have been filled today with responses to COVID-19, we're adapting our leadership program. We don't know when we'll offer our international study tour again, but I do know we're going to create unique leadership training opportunities that are sought after by students across this state. Many other students in this audience will not only have to adapt their travel plans, but also their graduation plans. This too shall pass. So running Mannkal during this period has highlighted the need to be clear about our mission as well as our operational flexibility. So when we educate future free market leaders, which you'll see on stage in future years, the training they'll go could be radically different. Circumstances will change and so will we. I'm fortunate to be supported by an excellent team at Mannkal and we who are constantly driving change to achieve Ron and Jenny's vision. In particular, we now have Jen Hammond working with us, and she's helped reinvigorate our program. Jen also is able to inform me when I'm wrong in plain language, and I'm told this happens quite often. So, back to the reason we're here. The program and Mannkal would not be possible without the support and guidance of Mr. Ron and Jenny Manners. They're the reason we're running a world-class program, and they're the reason some of your children have had the experiences they have. So when designing our program, we work with a range of international partners within the Atlas network of think tanks. One of the most successful think tank leaders is our friend and colleague, Lawrence Reid. I have no doubt that we draw on some of his insights and teaching and incorporate into our program. So Larry is the Foundation for Economic Education's President Emeritus. He's the Humphreys Family Senior Fellow and also the Ron Manners Ambassador for Global Liberty. He was President of FEE from 2008 to 2019, and he also taught economics in Northwood University during the 1980s. Larry has been on a regional tour to share his experiences with a range of think tanks. His program and tour is organised by Nicola Wright, who's managed logistics in a number of cities, which has obviously been adapted with current developments. So I'm going to invite Larry onto the stage, and he's going to lead a discussion with two of our recently returned scholars. You will hear from Robert Abrams, who travelled through Europe, Hong Kong and Israel, as well as Siena Ellison, who completed her study in the United States. Please welcome Larry, Robert and Siena to the stage.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here. And I suppose I'm also rather lucky to have made it here, given the international travel conditions. But I made it, and I'm delighted to be a part of this event. I also want to thank you all for your support of Mannkal and for the ideas of liberty, the values that we share. Congratulations to Siena and to Robert for recently completing the Mannkal Leadership Program. They are back from their travels only by, a couple weeks, I think, and safe and sound, and here to tell you a little bit about their experiences abroad. We have a couple pictures that we want to show. Are we ready with those? Okay. We have one that features Siena and another that features Robert, and each of these photos say something about the experiences they've had. I see the one that's up there now is with Robert on your right. And so why don't we then start with Robert? Tell us where is this at, and what effect did it have on you being there?
Well, if I'm being honest, Larry, I don't know the exact location. Been trying to devise it
Zero effect
for the last day or so, but no success. Look, it is in London, I know that much. The exact site, no, I'm not so sure. But yeah, look, this was in London during our time with the Institute of Economic Affairs, and we were really lucky to spend a week there. And as part of that, we were able to do a Westminster treasure hunt, and that involved going around and seeing a few sites. So that was a really fantastic opportunity. As I said, we saw this fantastic site, which we don't know the name of, but nonetheless, we got a good photo, so it was an enjoyable time.
Somewhere in Westminster.
Indeed, mate, indeed.
Okay. Thanks, Robert. And Siena, this is a famous landmark in the United States. Tell us where.
Absolutely. It's the Supreme Court of the United States of America, an extremely iconic place in Capitol Hill. We were overlooking the Capitol building itself, these incredible white buildings with these large white pillars. I think the glare was honestly an issue for us. But in terms of the history and the significant events that had occurred, it was just incredible to be there. Being a part of history, really, it was quite amazing.
I think you were lucky, too, because you were there, obviously, with no protesters, no placards, no people marching around demonstrating in any way. You know, it's always tempting when you talk to people who have just come back from literally 2 months abroad, right? And to talk about sights, things that they saw, the physical things that they saw. But the experience in the Mannkal Leadership Program is so much more than that, isn't it? These are not just vacations. You work and you observe, you learn and you experience. Tell us what the takeaway is from your 2-month experience in the places that you visited.
For me personally, traveling to the United States of America, I left Australia with fundamental libertarian values, but I didn't exactly understand where they had come from, the philosophy necessarily behind it. And I feel like through traveling to the United States, it gave me a broad perspective on all the different libertarian think tanks, their ideologies, their philosophy. It gave me a better understanding of my philosophy, understanding the roots, the philosophers itself, and it also taught me to challenge myself and my personal philosophy in order to expand it, to understand it better, and ultimately to believe in it. And that was truly inspiring.
Fantastic. Robert?
I think for us we were very lucky to visit a variety of places. We started in Hong Kong before the coronavirus, thankfully, and we finished in Israel. So we got a diverse experience in that regard. I think going before the trip, I was a libertarian at heart. I was probably too conservative, to be honest, in both an economic and social sense. But exploring these different areas, and particularly certain countries with a high emphasis on the social sector, such as Denmark and the UK, gave me a really rewarding perspective on why it's important to appreciate social ideas and socialist systems in order to strengthen our arguments for libertarianism. So in that regard, it was a really rewarding experience.
Yeah, the really great thing is that you didn't go to just one place and come away thinking you'd seen an entire country. In fact, in your case, Siena, in the U.S., you were coast to coast, and you had a special experience in San Francisco, I think, at the Hoover Institute. Can you tell us about that?
Well, all the experiences at all the different think tanks were incredible, but one that did stand out for me was the Hoover Institute. It was located in the heart of Stanford University, which was pretty incredible given the history and the prestige that Stanford holds. And we got to listen and engage with some amazing speakers, such as the former Secretary of Defense, John Mattis. And he shared an incredible story and a few words with us. And one of them, if you don't mind if I share it with you now, but it was when he was on a military boat in the middle of the ocean and they saw this refugee boat. And the refugees, from his binoculars, were absolutely distraught. They were freaking out. They were jumping off the boat. But when the boat turned around, the military boat turned around and they saw the American flag, they started jumping for joy and were so relieved. And he said, this is what the American flag means to people. It means freedom. It means liberty. And that story was just so moving from his personal experience as such an incredible individual with such an amazing experience himself. And I guess the whole conversation at Stanford University was about valuing the liberal democratic state that is America and obviously in Australia as well, and not to take it for granted. And that was really empowering for myself, and it really spoke quite loud to me and wanting to come home and to spread that message here because, as he quoted himself, we've come to take democracy for granted, and I couldn't agree more, and it was extremely empowering.
As an American, I especially appreciate what you've just said. Robert, I think you told me earlier today that of all the places you went to, Israel left the greatest impact. Tell us why.
Yeah, look, going to Israel was an incredible experience. It really was a pinch yourself moment when you land in Tel Aviv and head down the highway to Jerusalem, and you realise you're in this, unbelievable place, this melting pot for, religious and political ideas. We were very fortunate to be led by Sherry Sufi. I should say Dr. Sherry Sufi. He tells me he didn't do his PhD for nothing, so I'll slip that one in for him. But look, it was an incredible opportunity to engage in modern ideas, particularly the modern technology, which has come to be a part of the Israeli culture. So one example of that was when we were able to attend the Our Crowd conference in Jerusalem, and this conference centered around bringing together thousands of entrepreneurs and business people into a variety of conference rooms to discuss how we can drive the world forward using modern technology. And I think this is a really important takeaway for us scholars, particularly here living in Australia, where we are so reliant on natural resources, particularly with the mining industry. And of course now we're seeing with the coronavirus how this is impacting our economy directly. So how we can use this and go forward using modern technology, I think Israel is a great example of that.
Now, you were gone for 2 months. You saw many things, did a great deal of travel. In what ways would you say the experience changed you? Or can you say that you are in any way a different person because of your 2-month experience?
Absolutely. As corny as it sounds, it was a life-changing experience. I think 2 months abroad with 7 people that you've never known before and become incredible close friends with and meet this entirely new network of people, see this entirely new culture, I don't think you can come away from that unchanged. Personally for me, as I said before, I did go with fundamental libertarian values, especially economic values, but it challenged me both like emotionally and personally as well as academically. And in that, I think I understood my personal ideology and philosophy better. I understood the philosophy behind the libertarian arguments, as well as that, I think, living with these 7 people, as I think I briefly mentioned to you before today, I think it's a common misconception that the American and Australian cultures are so similar. And don't get me wrong, in many ways they are, in terms of our fundamental values of, liberty and freedom and democracy. However, in many ways they're also extremely different. And with these slight nuances between our cultures, it enabled me to open my mind, challenge myself, think differently about the world, think broadly about the world. And as I said before, it was truly inspiring, and I feel like I've got all this inspiration now and I've just got to let it go now back in Australia. So definitely changed me.
That's the plan, isn't it, Ron? It worked. Robert, how about you?
Yeah, no, I know we're running short on time, so look, a very short answer would be it did. It was an incredibly rewarding experience. We learnt a lot. We were exposed to incredible networks, so to any budding scholars out there who are interested in the program and getting involved with Mannkal, I could not recommend it more. So thank you again to all those who have invested in the program, and your investment is really appreciated.
One last question for both of you. We have people here in the audience that they make up quite a diverse group, in the sense you've got young people who may be future applicants to the program. You've got older folks who support the program. How about a message for those who are thinking they might want to apply? What would you tell them as to what they can expect or why they should apply for this program in the future?
Well, I think Rob summed it up quite nicely, but honestly, it is a life-changing experience. It does challenge the ideologies that you hold. It broadens your horizons. It opens your mind. It is completely worthwhile. And as Rob stated before, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, the entire team at Mannkal. Thank you to everyone who puts money into us and invests in us, because it truly is a valuable experience. It is life-changing, and it's totally changed my perspective and inspired me incredibly. So if that's not enough to get you involved, I don't know what is.
And I think Eva's looking at me to turn off the microphone. So look, I'll just say, definitely apply for the Mannkal program. It's a fantastic opportunity to really change your life in a variety of ways. So cheers again.
Thank you, Siena and Robert. Aren't they fantastic? Thanks again, Siena. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Now to our keynote speaker. We're pleased and honoured to welcome Gloria Alvarez to Perth. Recently, I think last year, Ron and I were in Hong Kong at Lion Rock, and we heard Gloria speak about her experience in countries which faced repression, and we were thoroughly impressed with her because we wanted to convey this to the students. So we've organised Gloria to come here, and she's doing a tour with IPA. As you'll see, Gloria is a force of nature. She's a broadcaster, writer and communicator, and she's published several books in her native language of Spanish. So now it's my great pleasure to welcome Gloria to the stage, and she's going to share her optimism for the future and talk to the graduating students about possibilities in an uncertain world. Please welcome Gloria.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here in Australia. And the first time that I met Ron, I don't remember if it was first Madrid or then Hong Kong, but he was always like, when are you coming to Australia? And I was like, what am I gonna do in Australia apart from like the beautiful beaches and looking at kangaroos and koalas, but like working there and talking about Latin America? Like, what can possibly be interesting to Australian audiences about Latin America? But the more I travel the world, and this is something that I think that people that have done the Mannkal program are gonna agree with me, the more you travel the world, the more cultures you see, the more sense liberty makes. I'm yet to discover someone that can argument to me that humanity is made to be enslaved, robbed, or deprived from their liberties. The more I travel, the more I find that the three human rights are to life, to liberty, and to private property. Because dignity in every individual is something that transcends where do we come from, how do we look, who our parents are, or how much money do we have in our wallet. These ideas will unite you with the rest of the world. But there is some bad news. You're always going to be the minority. If you study history, you're going to find out that people who fight for freedom are always a minority, are a minority against dictators, and are a minority against majorities that, for two reasons, ignorance or pure evil, are fighting against the basic individual dignity and liberty in the world. So welcome in being part of an exclusive minority that has always been persecuted, bullied, harassed. But you know what? At the end, always freedom wins. That's the reason why humanity hasn't killed itself 1,000,000 years ago, thousands of years ago. It doesn't matter how stupid and tyrannical sometimes as humanity we can be, always freedom wins. And that's the reason why we have overcome world wars and disease and probably the coronavirus. I hope so. But liberty needs messengers. And it needs messengers in every generation because it's a message that is quite rapidly forgotten. And guess what? The better humanity gets, the easiest it is to forget how liberty needs to be cherished and defended. So we need people that take this message from generation to generation. And it's not only about economics. I come from like the only libertarian university on this planet, UFM in Guatemala. And let me tell you, I studied semesters of economic process, Hayek philosophy, Mises philosophy, public choice, law and economics, you name it. But when you start living liberty and you understand that being free means being responsible, then it becomes something that you live. You don't preach liberty, you live liberty. And being responsible means how able are you to respond to the things that life throws at you? Are you going to be a victim? Or are you going to be resilient for the things that life brings to you? And there's a famous quote of the Spider-Man movies. I don't know like what number because they do a lot of Spider-Man movies every 3 years. But in one of them, Uncle Pete says to Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Actually, it's the other way around. The more able you become to respond to what life throws at you, the more power you will achieve. So first comes responsibility, and then comes the great power. And that great power, you're going to be able to have as broad as you want it. Because the message of liberty goes beyond, as I already said, borders, nationalities, class, or sex. Anna Julia Cooper had a quote that said, the cause of liberty is not a cause of a party, of a class, of a sect, of a race. It is the birthright of humanity. It is the reason defending these ideas that it is possible for me as a Cuban, Hungarian, Guatemalan from the other side of the world being able to connect with you here in Australia, speaking the same language. And I dare you to go abroad, to travel, to confront the ideas of liberty every time you meet someone that has different beliefs, different sexual interests, different backgrounds. And it's not about having a homogenic culture. The fact that we are diverse and the fact that every single human being has talents and ways of achieving different innovations, that's what keeps humanity surviving, no matter how many dictators or how many majorities want to keep us in the dark. So welcome to this bullied but beautiful minority of freedom fighters all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria. If you could stay nearby, we're going to move to the stage where we award the certificates to our graduating cohort. If I could get Eva, Larry and Gloria ready to present, and I think our students are going to have to come closer to the stage. Don't be shy. So this group has returned back in the last couple of weeks. The format is I'm going to read their names. They're going to come up on stage. Please hold your applause to the end. And I will get started. Rob Abrams, Emma Bolton, Emil Channer Holmes, Nicole Chapman, Siena Ellison, Carmen Gianfrancesco, no Francine, Alexander Gurak, oh, we have Francine, Alexander Gurak, Annie Harfusen, Jordan Hill, Ben Hunter, Harry Lowe, Damon Miles, Jason Pang, Cade Stone, Juan Vargas, Ivan Zoe. Please congratulate all of our scholars. If you could stay there, Larry and Gloria. Now, each year we have a prize for the most outstanding scholar. We call this the John Hyde Prize. John Hyde, who's sitting in the front row, he was the member for Moore from 1974 to 1982, and he was the key figure in the dry reform movement. He helped shape the economic reform that Hawke and then Keating implemented. We have deliberately and with a lot of reluctance from Mr. John Hyde himself, used his name for the award. So John, can you stand up so we can recognise you? So this year, the best and outstanding student from this cohort who wins the John Hyde Prize is Jason Pang. Thank you. Everyone. Yep. Thanks, Gloria. Well done. So before I turn over to Larry to invite Ron to say his final words for the evening, I'd like to thank the fantastic staff at Mannkal. Their work, their focus, their efforts is why I can stand up here and deliver the moderating and chairing of this event, and that we can produce such great graduates from our program. Thanks to Jen, Eva, Elise, Damon and Josh, and in particular Judy Carroll. I've worked with Judy for a number of years. She's a fantastic rock and she makes a lot of the stuff happen, and for the students she sees everything, absolutely everything. So thank you, Judy. One final housekeeping matter. If all the students, the Mannkal ambassadors and directors can please come to the stage after the formalities. Ron and I would like to organise a group photo to recognise tonight. So Larry, now I hand over to you, and it is your role to introduce a very important man in this whole venture, Mr. Ron Manners, and for you to give him his due and really to recognise his impact on the world stage. So over to you, Larry.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Because Ron is such an old friend, I think we go back 25 or an elderly old friend. We go back so long and so many years, and I'm also staying at the home of Ron and Jenny Manners, so I thought I'd better have a prepared intro, because if I get it wrong, I might be sleeping in the street tonight. Well, any expert in etiquette knows that there are three kinds of manners: good ones, bad ones, and Ron. Since I retired as the president of the Foundation for Economic Education almost a year ago, three titles have adorned my business cards. And one of them, I'm very proud to say, is the Ron Manners Global Ambassador for Liberty. It's a proud and daily task trying to live up to the standards that Ron has set. Though his interests stretch from mining to education here in his native Australia, I can assure you that Ron is known throughout the world's vibrant and growing liberty movement. If I had an ounce of gold for every conference he's attended on 6 continents, I could make even the dollar sound again. The title of Ron's new book, The Lonely Libertarian: Turning Ideas into Gold and then Gold into Ideas, sums up his amazing life. By extracting metals from the earth, he created jobs and wealth. Then he put much of his earnings to work on behalf of the very freedom that made that possible. Oh, how I wish more business people would see the great wisdom of such priorities. I want to share with you something that Ron wrote himself along these lines before I ask him to come to the stage. He wrote, "Unfortunately, most of our problems would not have occurred had we been as concerned about preserving liberty as we were about earning a living and paying taxes. Most of us are so busy and preoccupied that we have neglected to preserve the freedom that protects our rights to keep what we have earned." I once heard someone say that there are only 3 kinds of people in all the world. There's a very small minority which makes things happen. Then there's a somewhat larger group that watches things happen. And then there's the vast majority of people who never know what happened. Ron is clearly in that first category, a man who has made things happen and continues in his 80s to make things happen. Will you welcome to the stage, please, Ron Manners.
Have I got to use that, or is that's the instructions for the night? Too loud. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate your comments, but tonight's not about me. It's all about the next generation. Folks, by watching our Mannkal team tonight, you've seen how they interact with the up-and-coming scholars, and you'll see why I enjoy going to the office. Great bunch to work with. Our task is simple. It's just to awaken opportunities in young people. That's all. We just awaken opportunities. Sometimes these possibilities for opportunities are qualities that they're unaware of themselves. Maybe their parents are unaware, or their lecturers are unaware. But our team have developed skills into looking into their eyes and seeing what potential they've got. So it's pretty simple. We just wait for these opportunities to emerge and hatch in these people. Now, I'd like to thank my wonderful wife, Jenny, who's been my companion and partner in so many things. And Jenny creates an environment in which she gives me freedom to be a workaholic. I'd like to thank our wonderful team, led by the remarkable Andrew Pickford. They've accepted the opportunity, the challenge really, of continually improving this process. It's one of continual improvement, and we learn, we get great feedback, not only from the scholars, but we get feedback from our host institutions that all those scholars spend time with. Whilst it's a simple task, there are many moving parts in the process. And coordinating all the things that are happening with all of those institutions in so many countries, in so many cultures, is quite a challenge. But we're encouraged because the host institutions in many cases are actually demanding that those scholars return and continue working with them. That's the vote that tells us how we're going. We've got more work to do, so you watch what we've got coming up. So I'm also a greedy bugger in that I believe in rational selfishness, and this is really all about me in the sense that I feel that I'm winning. I am winning because I'm learning something every day from these people I'm working with. And if there's a theme for tonight, these words from Solon, the Athenian statesman and poet, might be appropriate. He might have been speaking to me. He said, "Seek to learn constantly while you live. Do not wait in the faith that old age by itself will bring wisdom." Thank you, Solon, for speaking up on my behalf and keeping me focused. Now, talking about learning experiences, we're lucky to have with us at Mannkal two remarkable international speakers for this week, and we've sure been learning a lot from Larry and from Gloria. Larry I regard as the master storyteller. His stories are about real people in real life situations, and they explain the power of character and courage, and how these qualities offer antidotes to the present decay in political and business leadership that we are experiencing. I might venture to suggest that this decay is a result from retreating from the importance of personal responsibility, defaulting itself to the easier and lazier embrace of a narrative of victimhood. Larry, may you long continue telling those stories and writing those wonderful books that have such great appeal to all cultures in all countries of the world. They all know Larry Reid. Thanks again for being with us again. And to Gloria, I clearly recall my first meeting. It was at the Free Market Roadshow in Madrid, and Gloria was on stage giving it to them in fluent Spanish. And I was sitting there in the front row saying, my God, if this girl could only speak English, I would agree with every word she's saying. And it wasn't until breakfast the next morning that I realised that she could speak English better than I could. So we've been friends ever since. And I remember when you were the speaker last year at the Lion Rock Institute, there was a bunch, only about 500 people. At the end of your comments, a very pompous British gentleman stood up you may recall. He said words to the effect, "Young lady, you've been very disparaging on what you've been saying about communism and socialism. Don't you think there are some redeeming aspects of those that could be for our benefit?" Now, I've always been taught to always focus on points that you have in common when you're asked a question like that. If you do, you might end up with a long-term friendship even after all that. But not Gloria. She let this guy be seated again, and then you fired both barrels. And I think I've constructed your response something like this. You said. You obviously have never had any direct contact with communism or socialism. That means we are exactly the opposite, because I can speak from first-hand experience. My grandfather fled from Hungary to escape from communism, and then my parents, some years later, fled from Cuba to escape communism. They then settled in Guatemala, where I was born and educated. If you had any knowledge or experience with communism or socialism, you would agree with me that there are absolutely no redeeming features whatsoever. And to incorporate any of these cruel and callous qualities exhibited by communism, despite the way it is currently dressed up as a warm and fuzzy thing, you would never have asked such a question. Well, this guy sunk down into his seat. He almost became invisible, and I can guarantee you that he probably has never, ever appeared in public ever again. So what did I learn from this? I learned that you have to be in complete command of your facts if you're going to be confrontational like that and win an argument so conclusively. The whole of that audience, the other 499 people, were so delighted with your response. And that person probably will never, ever be invited again. So look, thank you, Larry, and thank you, Gloria, particularly for continuing these valuable roles in helping us understand what is so good about liberty and how it's given us so much and how we should be so proud of it. So let me invite you all, in the last few hours we've got here tonight, until they close the bar at least, to spend time with Larry and Gloria and ask them all those questions that you're dying to ask them. And also, when we get our glasses full and we can drink a toast to the wonderful gift that we've been given called responsible liberty. Thank you.